I think that we're going to need to protect our gains. We've heard a lot about what President Trump's administration, what their plans are. We've heard a lot about Project 2025, and some of it really does go after all of the great work that was done in the last legislative session.
We're rolling. We're rolling.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you have the balls to stop this. Stop this.
I've got plenty of time. I have nothing else going on today.
We're in the Wedge neighborhood right now.
This is the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Today, I'm joined by another Senate District 60 candidate, Monica Meyer. Welcome, Monica.
Thanks so much for having me on. I'm really excited to have a conversation with you.
Monica, along with a whole cast of characters, is running to fill the open seat of Carrie Zizik, who passed away last week, December 27th, and the DFL primary is January 14th. Tell your friends. A lot of people are not going to know this is happening.
We're talking to voters, and it is people, also it's over the holidays. And so I feel like people are surprised. Yeah. So we need to let people know there's an election coming up.
Yeah. So in this whirlwind, I have noticed you are raising a lot of money. So one, how much have you raised at this point? And two, how could you possibly spend any of it in less than 2 weeks?
We've raised $35,000, I believe. And I feel really honored and so grateful to have support from all over the state. And then, and really, I think people really just wanted to, I've been working on LGBTQ equity issues and working for justice and love for so many years. I feel like people wanted to just really throw down and throw some money in and support me, which has been I'm just so humbled and my heart is so full. So anyway, all that to say, we're spending money. We have staff and we have mail and we have digital ads. And so, we're spending money. It is a short amount of time, but I still think what's key is the part that I love about this is just talking to voters and hearing what people are thinking, what's on their mind, what's on their hearts as we head into 2025.
So how do you have time to get mail out? That's what I've been wondering, because you've got to come up with it. You've got to write it. You've got to print it and mail it. Is there time for that?
There is. It's, I feel like we have a good infrastructure in Minnesota. So we launched the campaign on Thursday and then created the mail on Friday. So okay. It's quick. It's very quick.
What is a pain in your butt right now? What are you hating about the fact that you don't have any time? What are you trying to overcome? What have you immediately realized we need to overcome this? Is it everything, or is there one thing that stands out?
I feel like I think to me, what I care about is that voters know that the election's happening and that they feel like they have a sense of what the issues, people are talking about, what the candidates stand for, and that they can get involved. And I just think it's a really short timeline for that. So we're just doing all we can to let voters know at least who we are and what I want to do if I get in the Senate.
So what does Minneapolis need from the legislature right now? It's closely divided, both houses, a lot of concern. I'm concerned, will anything even be able to get done at all? What do you think your district, which is mostly Northeast Minneapolis, what do we need from the legislature?
Well, I think, for one, I'll just say, it really is just such a tragedy that we lost Senator Dietzick, and she was such a hardworking champion. And I had plans to just have a toddler hangout. My partner and I have a 2.5-year-old. So we were going to have a toddler hangout on New Year's Eve. and and I started getting calls to just for people to ask me to run. And so I decided to throw my hat in the race. I think that what we need is we're going to need to protect our gains. So I feel like we've heard a lot about what President Trump's administration, what their plans are. We've heard a lot about Project 2025, and some of it really does go after all of the great work that was done in the last legislative session. So in 2023 and 24, we were able to just pass so many good protections, do so many, enact so many policies that I feel like a lot of us were talking about for a really long time, like paid family leave. We were able to finally ban conversion therapy. We were able to pass a shield law for people seeking abortion and reproductive health services. And then, pass the trans refuge law. You name it. It's like the list is so long. And I feel like what the Trump administration and Project 2025 have been saying is that they're going to find ways to cut funding for states that have been able to just, make so many great changes that make a difference in people's lives. And I'm ready for that fight. I don't want us to have to do it, but what I hope we can do is at least, as to come together and really figure out how we can protect our gains and really fight for what we believe in, and be able to figure out some really clever, creative ways to do that.
Let's help people get to know you and your leadership qualities. Can you talk about a time you saw a problem, you said somebody needs to do something, and you stepped up and you led and you helped to address it?
Yes. I'll talk. So I've been doing organizing and advocacy since the late 80s, and then paid since the early 90s. But I think one of the issues that I really loved working on how to make our schools more inclusive and supportive for all students, including LGBTQ youth. And so I started working at Outfront Minnesota in 2001. I worked there for almost 20 years, but and I was the policy director and then the executive director. But one of my first meetings I had was, at the time, I met with Scott Dibble before he was a senator, and we just started talking about what we're hearing in the schools, how kids how they were getting bullied, and that they really felt like there was just silence, that there was not a lot of people even noticing or recognizing and acknowledging the hostile climate. And so we started working on policy at that time, and we were able to finally pass the Safe and Supportive Schools Act in 2014. So that was it was a long time, but what I loved about learning about how to pass that legislation and get the support we needed was the way that we did it was really just including a lot of youth and really hearing from youth about what the schools were like for them, the issues that they had, hearing from educators and hearing from parents and bringing everyone together. And I love that. I love figuring out that here's a problem. There's you pass state law, and of course you can pass state law and there can still be bullying in the schools. And so we're also, working to change the climate to make Minnesota more inclusive. We make sure that we have schools that are more respectful. And of course, the state law can only do so much for that. But what I like to do is think about how do we use a policy hook to bring people in and to also help change the culture. And that's the work I've been doing. And so that is what we did to pass the Safe and Supportive Schools Act. It was really tough. There were hearings. I think it was filibustered for I don't even want to, but over 10 hours on the floor. It went into the middle of the night. We were working with a bunch of youth who stayed with their parents, and they were able to stay up and stay later. And someone sent over a bunch of pizza, and the kids were writing knock jokes and jokes to the legislators in the House, so that we'd write little notes to them and then watch them get them, and then they'd laugh just to keep them staying there while there was a filibuster. Minnesota version of a filibuster. But all that to say is, I think that's, to me, I really liked that youth were at the forefront of that work and that they were really the main spokespeople. They helped really inform what the policy was. And I just think about I've always been on the advocacy organizing side, but as a senator, I really want to think about like, how are we really bringing community together? How are we really making the whole process of policy and make the Capitol as accessible as possible so that more people's voices are heard? And then how do we build consensus around some good policies that, that will really make a difference in people's lives? So that's why I'm running. I really, I've always, I love that piece of how we do our work.
Two-part question on public safety. First, what does Minneapolis need on public safety? And part two, will you commit to funding whatever it takes to bring back the horse police in Minneapolis?
I have not thought about horse police.
Really? You're the only person in Minneapolis who is not thinking constantly about the horse police.
I will say this, like, I feel like when I think about safe communities, I am thinking more about how we're making our communities, I'm thinking about climate resilience. I'm thinking about how we're making our, particularly in my district, what we're doing about the pollution, what we're doing about making sure that there's, affordable, accessible housing, that people, so I think about safety in kind of a different way. I have a lot to learn on a lot of the different policies that I think the senators, wrestle with every day. But I'll just say this, like, I'm really open to, again, hearing from community members, hearing from diverse, opinions, trying to bring people together and really do my best to represent our district, and really work with the legislators to enact that. And I think for Minneapolis, like, I love Minneapolis. I'm originally from the north end of St. Paul, and then in Blaine. So very close. Blaine is very close. But I've lived here now for a long time. I've lived in Northeast Minneapolis for the last 10 years with my partner and now our 2.5-year-old kid. And I love it. And I want to do whatever I can to fight for our city. Yeah.
So encampments, I feel like with a lot of these questions, it's just like, I pledge to send Minneapolis resources to deal with these problems. It's like, you're not going to say no. What is the question for you? I'm going to ask you what the question should be about homelessness and encampments and what we should expect from the legislature.
Well, as far as my understanding from the legislature, I feel like I think it is about, trying to get resources to Minneapolis to have more affordable housing. I think that there are some state policies around housing that we can enact. And I really would like to see that we have zoning policies that really ensure that there can be multiple dense housing and all over the state. So that part I know. But I want Minneapolis to have resources. And I think it's going to be a tough financial year. So, but I'm ready to try to work to get more resources. I didn't answer your question though about the question.
Oh yeah, yeah. Tell me.
But yeah, I don't know what the question would be actually.
See, that's my dilemma, figuring out new and interesting ways to ask. How are you going to send lots more resources to Minneapolis to address these problems? Right. So you mentioned statewide zoning reforms. That was a topic the last couple of sessions. It's making a little progress each time, but not quite getting over the finish line. So you would support statewide zoning reforms to make multifamily housing just easier to build across the state?
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, that's part of what makes Minneapolis great is that if we can just continue to have more dense housing and bring more people in, I think that's great. And make it affordable, obviously. I mean, and figure out ways where we can have housing that's affordable and that people can really live with dignity and have full lives and not have to use their entire paycheck just to be able to live in a place.
So everyone I talk to in this race, in every race, is going to tell me we need to. I'm going to fully fund public schools. Everyone's going to say that. Tell me how you are different and better.
Well, I am going to say that as well. And I think what I'm going to say is that I have a lot to learn on how we do that in a better way. I am for the moratorium on charter schools, on new charter schools. And I do think we need to be thinking about how we're truly making sure that our schools are funded. So I don't think I have like a bigger nuance on that than the other candidates.
Okay, transportation. So the rethinking I-94, our streets, Minnesota has this plan to turn into a Twin Cities Boulevard. You've got some kind of terrible street infrastructure in District 60. So do you have any thoughts on removing interstates? Is that a good idea? Should we be exploring that at the state level? Any other thoughts on street infrastructure more broadly after you tackle that first one?
I do. So I will say this. I do think we have to continue to look at how we have our streets are accessible for everyone. So for pedestrians and bikers and our cars, and public transportation. And I don't know the best solution for that. And I know that that's a frustration that a lot of people have is it is the most noticeable in your life every day when you're trying to get around the city. So I don't know what all the way the answer is for that, but I think we do. Yeah, we need to keep working on better plans. I do love that we have bike lanes now, that we've really invested in making our streets wider and working on making them safer too for people to get around. But I don't have a specific answer on it.
I think it was. What is it, Ontario? What is the province that has Toronto in it in Canada? Is it Ontario? Toronto, Ontario?
Yeah, I believe so.
We're going far afield here, but the Ontario government recently stepped in and told Toronto, no, you can't do those bike lanes. We're going to preempt, basically state preemption or provincial preemption of bike lanes. It's giving me nightmares. I'm like, are we one day going to have a state government in Minnesota that is going to preempt bike lanes? Scary stuff.
Yeah, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
No, yeah.
So my question to you, you won't vote for anything that would preempt bike lanes, would you?
No.
Okay, good.
No, I mean, I used to be a daily biker. That was my transportation. That was way a long time ago, I will say. And I was never the winter biker. But I just feel like we really need to make sure that it's just so unsafe when you're anyway, we just need to figure out ways to make it as safe that you can get around. And I love to walk. So now I'm more of a walker, and the same, that we need to have, safe ways for people to get around.
So is there anything we haven't covered? I have come to the end here. Anything about this race that you feel like you want to communicate?
Yeah, I mean, I am running. I'm really running because of some of the values that I talked about earlier, but really trying to figure out a way where we're getting as many voices included, bringing people together, and coming up with the best policies that make a difference in people's lives. And I have a lot of experience, and so I do feel like that's why when people were calling me and asking me to run, it's because I really have, I've been working since the early 90s on organizing and state policy, and everything from environmental justice when I was younger to economic justice and like the welfare reform of the 90s, to working on passing marriage equality and defeating the constitutional ban on marriage and the voter restriction amendment, and there's other issues too. But I will say, like, what I love about that work is really is really trying to figure out how we bring out the best in people. So, when we were working on marriage, I started working on that a really long time ago. It was at the time you didn't say marriage, you were just trying to think about, like, how do we get healthcare benefits for our families? And so when I first started at Outfront Minnesota, that was really what we were doing, is thinking like, how do we make sure that at least that if you have a partner, you can get them healthcare and you can also get your kids healthcare. And that was the biggest issue I felt like that we needed to work on. And so started doing that work early on. And every once in a while we'd ask people about marriage, like, what do you think about, like, why are you married? How do and that was at the time, for people don't, I mean, it was such a toxic issue politically. Like no one was supporting it. Like when the Defense of Marriage Act passed in like 1997, it was overwhelmingly most elected officials supported it on the federal level, in Minnesota on the state level as well. So all that to say, I think what I loved about that work was we were working to fix a specific problem, that there was no healthcare access for our families, but we were also trying to figure out how we do a broader statewide movement to get people to also eventually come on the side of supporting love and come on the side of supporting marriage equality. And I really loved that campaign of really traveling the state and getting to have people who were so courageous talk about their families and their stories, and really get people to come on board and be able to support equality and inclusion. And why I think that's relevant today is I do think we are, the Trump candidacy, we already know what's coming at us. Like already there's legislation that's going to hit on immigration really hard, and immigrants, and and then also really trying to divide people. And then also there's legislation that's going to really take away rights from trans people. And it was one of the promises that he made when he was running for office. But I think that this is a time where we really need to come together, and we really need to fight back, and we need to be unified in that. And we really need to make sure that we're protecting the rights and our gains, and that we're coming together to say, like, not in Minnesota. We have to figure out ways where we're protecting immigrants, and ways that we're protecting trans people, and ways that we're protecting all the gains that we made in the last couple of years, like being a shield state, being a trans refuge state, and you name it, lots of other protections. Driver's licenses for all, just so much good work was done. And I feel like that will make us a target. And so what does that look like if people are coming together to say, like, no, we're not going to let that happen here. We're going to fight.
Do you have any recommendations for me? Things that you're enjoying in your life, things you're having fun doing, some entertainment or a hobby that you want other people to take up?
I think I said I have a 2.5-year-old. So today I was reading Kate DiCamillo book about Mercy the pig, and we're reading a lot of Grumpy Monkey books. But and then just like my little escape is I'm rewatching Sex and the City. Ooh. And I've never watched Grey's Anatomy, and there's just endless amounts of it, so you can just like watch it. Right. Anyway, so that's my late night viewing, but mostly I'm just having the most amount of fun just hanging out with a kid and now talking to voters.
So when you go back and watch old TV, there's this question of how does it hold up, right? Does it make you cringe? Like, how does Sex and the City hold up for you?
Oh, there's so many cringy moments.
Is that why you watch it?
Yeah, exactly. And then there's some things that are so, like, it really was so revolutionary too, just to have a show about women that talking about sexual freedom in such a really open way. So that part still holds up. I think that's really wild. But yeah, there's lots of cringy moments, and it's good to see how far we've come. And yeah.
Well, thank you, Monica Meyer, candidate for Minnesota Senate in District 60.
Thanks so much. Thanks, John.
It's been the Wedge Live podcast. I'm your host, John Edwards. Thank you for listening.
This is a real thing. Real thing.
None of you
neighborhood right now, 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 right now.